Using 1/2 inch XPS insulation foam, I begin cutting the structure, starting with the sides at 2.5 inches or roughly 6.5 centimeters. I find this height is plenty tall for most terrain walls. This is not always to say the structure would necessarily be that high, but if you have a large table with tons of building terrain that's much taller, it can become difficult for yourself or your players to see or move the miniatures without constantly knocking things over. Normally I would just leave the walls going straight up, but I wanted it to feel more like a rough rounded tunnel that was carved out by an umberhole. To help with this, I used some scrap XPS foam and cut rough rounds. I aim to get them close in size to each other, but I'm not worried about getting them exact. I then stacked them on top of the wall and cut them to the same length, repeating this for the other side. I cut the base 4.5 inches or roughly 11.5 centimeters wide. This will allow some more room to place miniatures from overhead. Using super glue, I adhere the rounded pieces to the tops of the sides. If the rounded pieces do not line up with each other, then don't worry about it, as there will be more cutting to rough these pieces up, and this will be fixed during that step. Using a sharp utility knife, I began cutting and roughing the foam by making shallow cuts and breaking the pieces off to give it a rough look. When cutting, be very careful not to cut yourself. If you happen to have a whittling or carving glove, this would be a great time to wear it. You can see the band-aid on my thumb that was not there previously. Next, I adhere one of the walls to the base, but leave the other one unattached. This will make it easier for me to finish the next step, as well as easier to film what I'm doing. With a ball of rolled aluminum, I roll it over the foam to give it texture. I apply AK Interactive Muddy Ground terrain paste everywhere except the underside of the base. Where the walls and base meet, I apply more terrain paste to smooth the transition and to slightly round it. After the paste is dry, I thin down black acrylic paint with water and then cover everything evenly. Using a dark gray, I dry brush it on heavily, but I leave a decent amount of the black showing in the lower spots. I then apply a lighter gray paint via dry brush, this time covering less area, and then finally I apply a third and even lighter gray dry brushing, this time only on the highest points and on the edges. As a final step, I glue some extra mushrooms I had left over from the Cavern Bases video. You can find a link to that video in the top right in the informational link. I have plans to add some cobwebs and some other effects in the future, but I'm going to end this video here. This is the finished result. This is going to be it for today. I hope you learned something or were inspired to create your own terrain. Please leave a comment or ask any questions you may have, and if you like the content in this video and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. This is Jim with Working with Miniatures. I'm truly grateful for your time, and I bid you a fond farewell. Till the next video.